This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone, a warm welcome back. So in today's session, as promised, we will be spending time to get an overview of the entire project that we will first focus on, which is the AWS infrastructure project, and we will understand what we need for all this project and what is that you guys should be ready with. So I just picked up the course content, so just to be sure that I'm following 15.0. I hope everyone has a copy of that version 15.0. So in this version 15.0, as I mentioned from the previous version, I have been adding a few more topics to include, which are primarily all about the Logstash and kind of modules we have added here. So I'll discuss even that little later, but for now, just to be sure that the foundation sessions that we planned, I have been discussing where we started with the overview of AWS services. Then we learned about the method of virtualization and how to allow virtualization with Vagrant. Then we are focused on the networking concepts and basics, where we have been focusing on subnetting mask as a priority. Then we are focused on writing JSON and YAML script and the basics of Linux, which we have targeted, but that will not be the end, which we will be doing the learning of Linux every day we will be learning. So this process, I believe, this is not just only a day topic; it will be continuously a topic that we need to evaluate on continuous learning. So right after this basic foundation sessions, it's time for me to focus completely on the projects part. So if you guys can pick up the course content, you will see the first project that I wanted to discuss is all about how to build and architect a scalable infrastructure using AWS. How about now, people? Is my voice audible enough now?
Yes.
Is it a kind of issue for one person or is it an issue for the other? Please do let me know. So people, if this voice is still uh, a disruption, I would request you to do one thing, drop for a moment and join back. I hope this time it should get resolved.
Now it's okay.
Fine, thanks. Okay, so coming back to the point discussion. So the first project I wanted to spend time was to discuss about the uh, high availability infrastructure. So I'll explain you why we need all that. So let me pull up the infrastructure resources. So the idea of infrastructure, as you are all aware, what is AWS? AWS is a public cloud service provider. What they do offer, they offer whatever the infrastructure you need, they offer you as a service. Like you need a server, they'll provide you server. What kind of server? Virtual servers. So virtual servers they offer you. So since they are offering you, so there is a concept of service. Whenever the server is running, it's kind of a meter. It's like you start the machine. By the time you start it, your meter for the usage consumption will be running. So they will have to charge you, and you are taking a service from him, or you're taking service from AWS. So at any given point of time, neither your service should be disturbed nor your applications running on that service should be disturbed. Because if your service is down, if assume that AWS offering service is down, if a server is down, you will lose your business. Just imagine, very much like you are using Amazon.com. So Amazon is running. So Amazon is running on its own servers. If their servers are down, their business will be down. Likewise, you have an idea where you want to offer your customers products online and you're making good market. you're expanding your markets and you're hosting your application on AWS cloud. What happens when the service is down? Because you are paying for it, your service is down. So when your service is down, you will definitely have an impact on your business. Like your entire application is running on AWS cloud and servers are down, and you will be losing your business. So here AWS have to give you a commitment saying that at any given point of time, we will offer you a highly available service. That means at any given point of time, whether there is rain, whether there is a flood, where whatever is happening, it shouldn't impact your business. So in order to do that, how you will pick services of AWS and how do you go ahead and build using these services and infrastructure for your organization. So that is the aim from this project. The aim is at any given point of time, whether it's a zone level failure, whether it's a region level failure. I'll explain you what a zone and like there is a failure in kind of server, how you go ahead and handle that server failure. How to go ahead and make sure that there is a region level failure. So all these scenarios are being considered. That is part of a requirement. So the requirements will be very, very simple. The customer comes to me and says that, dear Mr. Kumar, we need you to focus on building an infrastructure. And this time that infrastructure should be very much elastic, very much scalable, very much fault tolerant. These are the three keywords he will use. And it is very tough for us to understand what he wants. Then we have to do an analysis what kind of applications he wants to run. So what we have done, people, is I'm trying to gather as much as architecting it and building our own infrastructure. So I have picked up all possible services that are going to be used. It is not that these are the only services in AWS we'll discuss. No, we have plenty other services to be discussed, to be implemented. So we'll do one thing. Instead of learning at them one go, we decouple them. Like we first build IAM, then we'll build load balancers, then we'll build servers. So this is what we will do. We will break up the entire learning in individual services, and then cumulatively that would become an entire uh, architecture by itself. So here I bring up the architecture for you people. So this is right now the architecture which I'm focusing. I'll explain you every possible detail in this architecture and the importance of the architecture, how it will handle. So before that, I hope is the idea of the agenda of the architecture or the overview of why we are building this, kind of project. What is the importance of this project? Are you people clear with the idea of why we are going ahead with this project? Because we would like to go ahead and architect a project, playing the role of an architect, understanding and building scalable, available infrastructure, highly available infrastructure that can handle failures from zone level to a region level. People, if you guys have understood it under the requirement section, can I expect a quick confirmation from all of you there so that I can proceed further in much more detail now? This is a requirement. Based upon the requirements, I'm trying to fit in the services. Okay, so let's continue. So the first layer is the AWS cloud. That is where the application is getting hosted. So the first part, the topmost layer, as you can see, is AWS cloud. People, it is recommended when you play a role of an architect, you have to use AWS icons. These are the icons which are used by AWS. These are the images, icons, we call it as. They will be offered to you. So when you need to design a solution, it is very much recommended you use such icons. Okay, so the first part is the outermost layer is all about giving you importance or the significance of the outermost layer is AWS cloud. That means we are hosting on AWS cloud. And the first focus will be on the user management. my complete focus will be on the user management. Why? Because if you have proper user management, then things will work. What I mean is, if I don't know how to allow my users, or if I don't know what kind of access should I give them, if I have to give them uh, relevant access, if I don't know how to do that, then how my users will be able to access and how my employees will be able to, set up the project. So here, whenever I say users, there are possibilities that there are two kind of users. One user is the end user. The right word I would say is end user. That means he would go ahead and just use a service application. He doesn't know, are these running on servers, 2 servers, 10 servers, there's a database. He's an end user. See, you're using Amazon.com, but you don't know how many servers it is running. You don't know where is this server hosted. You don't have any, you don't have zero information about it. All you know is www.amazon.com. That's all you know as an end user. Now, another user can happen inside the system is your employees. Now, employees are those people who would be given access to set up, who would be given access to build the infrastructure, who would be given access to manage them, who would be given access to monitor them. So this is what an employee is expected to deliver because he has to have access. If an employee is an end user, what is the use? There is no use. I have to give him some privileges, like he should be given an admin privilege, or he should be given some kind of power usage, where he will be able to perform actions. Let's say he has to fix this, there is a server that is not working. So he should be able to fix this server. So this is what is about identifying who this user, end user or an employee or an administrator, or what kind of group does he belong. Based upon that, I should give him access. This kind of service, we call it as identity and access management, called IAM. We have this service in AWS under the name of IAM, Identity and Access Management. So Identity and Access Management is the service which would go ahead and help me to better understand how to identify individual user or group of users and what kind of access should I give them based upon the identified, based upon their identity. If you people have understood the purpose of IAM, can I expect a quick confirmation from all of you there? Now, based upon this, I would be using this IAM in my project. So I'm open for your questions. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I have one question. My name is Abdul Hadi.
Yeah,
So the business, the client administrators have also some rights, as you told, like they can also set up servers or something like that. Is
correct.
that right? And this IM will be managed by solution architect AWS side.
Okay, I'll explain you. So IAM is a service that you will use from
Okay.
AWS, right? So
You
AWS
you
offers.
means solution architect.
Let's not bring solution architect. Let's not.
I,
I'll
I
make it
mean to
simple
say,
for you.
okay.
Can I, Abdul?
Yes.
Right. Entire administrator's profile. You can take this one as an architect, the team of architects. That's what I said. Employees. Employees comprises of what? Architects, administrators, sysops admins, developer, entirely one segment. This is what I mean. I cannot show every profile there, like employees, administrators, developers, sysops admin. So what I said, let them just make it as an admin. So admin is group of employees who have levels like architect, admin,
That
and developer.
that is AWS employees.
No, companies. Your let's say I'm owning this company. So they are my employees now.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Let's say I have an application where I am selling some kind of similar to Spotify. I'm selling my songs across the world. Like I'm trying to stream my what do you call it as songs on the demand basis. So it is hosted in AWS. Just for an example. Now I have two kind of users. One who are end users, like I assume that you are an end user. So what do? You visit my app, you select the genre of the song, and you play the song. You're
Yes.
streaming my songs, right? So there should be someone to set up this server where they can run this application, they can manage this. So there are employees of my company. So I am saying the employees of my company are administrators, users are the end users. I don't know, I don't need to even know about my end users because they come, they use it, and they'll go. But for my employees, I should be aware, okay, I should be give them full access, limited access, read only access. This is what I'll manage. So how do you manage end user? How do you manage uh, your employees? This is governed by IAM. So when you go into IAM, you can create a user, give him full access, or if you can give him zero access. If he's given full access, he will become kind of admin. He can set up, create, destroy, delete, anything he can perform. And an end user can only go ahead and read an application like www.spotify.com, www.amazon.com. So he will only be able to perform action of accessing the application. Here,
Yeah.
now the role starts to come in. So as an architect, what is the role? To design an architecture. Let's say I'm an architect now. I'm part of the architecture team. So I have to understand the requirement. So I have understood the requirement. I designed this solution. Now, the rest of the team who are involved, they will develop the code, and as part of the admin, they will release the code. They'll maintain it, monitor it. So that is what is completely falling under this administrator section. End user, let me just start use project for this, and the end users who are accessing this system, they just start to access the system. That's all. Clear to all of you people? So this governance is done by IAM, Identity Access Management. So where our focus is, who is the user, what kind of access should I give him? If he is given access, how he will perform. If I don't give him access, what kind of actions can he perform? Can he perform? People, one other important thing to be noted here is for every resource usage, there is a billing happening, right? There's a bill happening or there is a consumption. So AWS will say, okay, you people are consuming my resources, pay for it. So I cannot allow everyone to access my resources because if I allow my administrators, allow my employees, all the employees to become administrators, they can they can start launching instances. For every instance launch, I'll be the person who will pay the bill. I'll be the person who will have to incur that bill. So I have to make sure, okay, authenticated administrators who have capability, they can understand, okay, what is the consequence of launching an instance, launching a database, launching some kind of other resources. There is a cost implication. So I should have someone who is knowledgeable about it. And that is why I'll give limited access to all other people. Only few selected people will have admin access. So how to do that? IAM will better do that for you. Okay, so if people have understood, can I expect confirmation from all of you there so that I can proceed a little more further? Okay, fine, thank you. Now, let's start looking from the uh, administrative, like from the employees perspective. So employees have started to, the company and employee has started to pick AWS Cloud as their cloud vendor, and now they have created their own network. So that network we call it as VPC. VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, which you can see here. It is Virtual Private Cloud. So what is a kind of Virtual Private Cloud? VPC is something that you will say, okay, AWS is giving. It's like you have apartment with about 10 floors, and each floor has about 5 houses. So about 50 houses I have. So if AWS is offering you in the form of AWS, if you can understand it like an apartment service. So what I need to do is I have to pick my own apartment. So you have a compartment saying that out of all this, your location is 501. That means fifth floor, first building. So how to identify, how to partition it from other people? Now I have to have a boundary against the rest of the people. Why? Because very simple. If you are using server, there is a chance that server might be shared by someone else, because I don't know what kind of server they use. I don't know is that they're offering my server that I'm running, maybe that is getting shared by someone. I don't even have access to it. So to make it very simple, it's a shared service. You're sharing the hardware of Amazon with someone else. So in order to make sure, in order to manage all these resources at one place, I built up a kind of my own private cloud, which is called VPC. It's like an empty land is given to you, and you are given plotted spaces. So what I say, okay, this is my piece of land, and I'll put a perimeter wall against my dimensions, and this is my plot. This part of the open land belongs to me. I'll go ahead and register that. Likewise, if there is a kind of service AWS is offering, I'll say that, okay, from this is my infrastructure, and this is the system where I will want all of my resources to be managed. So I need something to manage all of my resources at one place. That is the necessity of VPC, which is now my network in this case. Can I expect a quick confirmation regarding the importance of VPC in the architecture, people? I see only few people responding. I don't see others responding. I hope, is it not quite boring? Okay, no problem. Okay, people, let's say you and me are planning to host. You are a company and I am a company. We are planning to host on AWS, and AWS has server with that. So you created a machine and I created a machine, virtual machine. There is a chance. This is not reality, but out of reality, I'm saying there is a chance that my VM may be next to your VM. The VM that I create may be next to your VM. We might be using shared hardware, because both of us are using the shared hardware. Infrastructure is given by AWS. The server is given by AWS. My server, virtual server that I create, and the virtual server you create might be next to each other. But I'm really not interested to share with someone. I kind of want a perimeter on the server saying that this part of my this is a part of the server that belongs to me. Like if I have an open land with me, on if I'm trying to sell to the people, what people will do first thing, they will make sure that they plot that land and they secure that land by putting a boundary wall. So that makes it clear that this part of the land belongs to them. It doesn't get shared by someone else. Likewise, if AWS is giving you service, there is a possibility that it might we like the services might be next to each other. So in order to distinguish, put a boundary wall. That's what I had done. I put a boundary wall. In this, I'm creating my network. Or once my wall is constructed, then I can build. Okay, I'm going to build 2 floors. In that, ground floor will be given for my parking for the car. The first floor I use my room and on top of it. So I'll design accordingly, which will not interfere. This system will not interfere with someone else's system. Here. So for that, we have to use the basics of networking. So I'll explain you how to set the boundary. All that operational stuff we will do when we are inside this every service. So first service we have done with IAM. Next when we go to VPC, then we have to build using our networking skill set. How do we go ahead and set the boundary? That is how you will use in AWS, and I'm going to show you with the networking skill set. The CIDR blocks we have to use. I'll explain you. Clear? Can I proceed for other people?
Yeah, please.
Right. After the setup, once it is done, now I have to make sure that my system starts has to be broken down. Very simple is like I built a house. Now I partition into two parts. First partition is open space where it is a kind of public seating where people will come and sit and they get access to. Like in my project requirement, I have some requirements where I have to allow internet traffic because the traffic has to come. People will make a request www.amazon.com. There should be someone to receive that request and resolve it. So for that, I have to make sure that I expose certain resources to internet. Okay. Is that better now, people? Right. So in services, in scenarios, I have certain things to get exposed to internet. Like I have my servers that takes a request. Very simple example is the moment you type www.spotify.com, www.amazon.com, these requests are to be resolved by someone who understands what is amazon.com, who understands what is spotify.com, any other request. So there should be some kind of a resolution for it. So that is where I have to have something which is exposed to internet. When I'm not exposing to internet, rest of all things fall under that system which are not getting exposed to internet. So I give the names as subnets. My network is broken down into what now? The entire network is now broken down into network, which is now kind of public subnet. Subnet means what? Network broken down into smaller networks. Subnet. The network broken down into smaller. But now I have a functionality for each subnet. Servers or system or a subnet that has exposure to the outside world that can access internet, I put them in public. Rest, they by default fall in private. Private means there is no internet access for it. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that first zone, now the concept of zone comes in. I'll explain you what is zone. Very, very simple, people. Zone is nothing but take a region. Region is what? A region is kind of a location. Let's say I'll pick India. Bombay is the data center location right now in India. In Bombay, we have three zones. Like zones, you can understand it's like zone 1 in central part of Bombay, zone 2 is in east part of Bombay, zone 3 in west part of Bombay. That means they have three data centers there. Why is that I'm using zones? If in case there is a heavy rainfall happening in Bombay and there is a kind of shutdown, there is power shutdown in central, I can switch from zone 1 to zone 2, which is in east, or zone 3, which is in west. So for that reason, I've picked out two zones. Zone 1, availability zone 2, and availability zone 1. Why that I'm picking out zone 1 and zone 2? This one will be my primary zone. And this one, in business terms, they call it as HA, high availability, or they call it as secondary. Why we do this? In case if this primary comes to a halt because of some reason, there is a power shutdown, there's a great flood, because of that, the entire power line is disturbed, all the servers are down, but I can't stop my business. I should have BCP, business continuity planning. In any case, my business should run. So I switch over to second zone, which is a kind of high availability. People, now have you understood how is that I'm going to handle zone level failures? One zone goes down, I shift to the second zone. If you people have understood the importance of primary to secondary, that is the high availability, can I expect a quick confirmation from all of you there?
Yes, understood.
Right?
Yeah, sir, this is Prithvi. Actually, I just need to know that it basically like a firewall which is protecting our data in this case, right? So actually my perspective for that.
Which one you mean, zones?
Yes. Yeah, sir, zones.
So firewall concept is very, very different here. Firewall concept, we have security group, which I'll explain in the next slide. But here it's kind of a load distribution that happens when this is primary. If the primary is going down, I shift to my secondary region. In case if the primary is going down, it's like one with regards to other. If one is running, my system is actually running in primary. Just assume that there is no secondary. Assume that there is no secondary at all. What happens? Suddenly there is a power shutdown, servers are down, my business is completely on halt. So at that time, I cannot go and say, okay, let me start my services in another region. So companies can't afford to have such kind of downtime. So if I have to start this, I might take even a day, 2, 3 to start all this in other region. So what companies want is,
Yes,
I
sir.
expect the first, sorry, right. So the purpose is, at any given point of time, I should have everything. Like if my primary is down, what is the next thing that you will handle? I'll go ahead and shift to secondary region. Even if the secondary is down, I'll shift entire region to another region. In this way, I'm handling any kind of issue with to my infrastructure. If primary is down, I'll shift to secondary. If the secondary is down, I'll shift to the region itself. This is, let's say, this is in Bombay region. I'm in Bombay region. So what I'll do, my backup, I put everything in another data center. Let's say in Singapore data center. If Bombay is completely down, there is a complete power shutdown happening in India. There are no, entire power system is coming to a halt. What I'll do, I'll switch my entire region into the secondary region like Singapore. People, are you with me now? So that's how we will handle zone level failures to region level failures. So for that, as part of the requirement, I picked up my zone 1. I have my subnets, which are public and private subnets. Public subnets, we prefer to host our servers that expose to internet, that get exposure to internet. Private subnets, which have minimal exposure to the internet. Clear to all of you people?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Right. Now, after the requirement, now I have the requirement to make sure that the servers are continuously receiving the internet traffic from the outside. So for a user, the user types in www.example.com, www.spotify.com, socialapp.com. So there should be someone to resolve that request. That is where your DNS is required. What does the DNS will do? The moment you type example.com, it has to understand, okay, this spotify.com, example.com, amazon.com are hosted in AWS cloud. If you're doing it, let's say my company is abcsolutions.com. If the company abcsolutions.com is hosted in AWS, then we need users to type in abcsolutions.com. That gets resolved with the hosted DNS service. This hosted DNS service in AWS, we call it as Route 53. So what does this Route 53 would do? This Route 53 will receive this request, resolve that request into the AWS. Now, how this request will happen? There should be a server to resolve your request. Now, this server, we call it as virtual machines in AWS Cloud or virtual servers in AWS Cloud. This is what we call it as EC2, Elastic Cloud Compute. These are nothing but your VMs, like virtual machines that you created in your premises, that in your system. The virtual servers you people have created when we started our session, you people were given skills to create your own VMs. We created our own VMs in our laptops. Now it's time for us to create those similar VMs in cloud, in AWS Cloud. So this kind of setup, we call it as EC2, virtual machines, VMs. We call them, instead of virtual machines, a simple word called instances, cloud instances, AWS cloud instances. So server is referring to a physical environment, virtual machines refer to virtual machines environment, instances to cloud environment. That's the analogy we follow. Now, the instances are available on cloud in the form of EC2. Now, if it would have been one server, the request would have gone directly to that single server. I'm sure people, you believe that it cannot be done over single server. We need plenty of servers to handle such requests. So for that reason, I am running now not with one server, but multiple servers. This is, people try only considering at this moment, only focus one region, primary. Secondary region is exact replica of your primary. Whatever that primary you have replica in secondary region. For now, let's focus on the primary region. So everything is running smooth. I have to have a multiple. So what does my DNS doing the moment user comes? As soon as the user comes and types in www.example.com, what I want my user to resolve via the DNS. The request would go to my instance. If it was single instance, my life would have been very, very simple. Not a single instance, that will work on multiple instances. So for that, we are required to use load balancing. So you should have a system that does load balancing across multiple EC2 instances. That is how the necessity for a load balancer starts to kick in. So what does this? It's like your traffic controller. The traffic controller is the one who makes what kind of traffic to allow and what kind of traffic to stop for a movement. So it is now navigating the traffic. So it is users resolution done using Route 53, reaching to the load balancer and load balancing distributing traffic across multiple instances. People are you clear now with the importance of the load balancer in the current scenario? Are you clear why we need a load balancer? When multiple machines are available, we need to do a distribution across load across the instances. That's where that is why we need a load balancer in this case. Clear to all of you people? Right. I'll explain you about the billing also, why billing will happen and how the billing will happen. Okay. Now, so we have considered about user module, we have considered about DNS module, we have considered about network module, we have considered about subnetting, we have considered about primary, we have considered about servers, we have considered about that load balancing. Now it's time for me to do a distribution across the data, which is into the database. We should have a database. So there are two ways to handle it. One way, launch a server, make it as a database. Or you go ahead and start DBaaS service. What do you mean by DBaaS? Whatever the database you need, AWS can offer you the database. The AWS is right now offering whatever the database that you want. For example, I want to run my Postgres. For example, I'm saying Postgres SQL. This is the database I need. So what you do if this is a real life scenario, what you do, you go, you get a server, you go get a server, install Postgres, start it, cluster it, and you use it. But when you go and knock the door of AWS says, you don't need to do all that for me. Tell me what you need. I need one Postgres. In a matter of minutes, Postgres will be ready. Okay, now I use that Postgres SQL for 1 day. So AWS bills me for 1 day. Do I need to manage that server? Not required. Do I need to take a backup of it? Not required. Do I need to make the snapshot of it? Not required. Do I need to monitor it? Not required. This is the advantage of using the BaaS service. Database is now given as a service. But what you have to do here, you have to pay to AWS saying that, okay, for 24 hours, you have used the database, and then you have to pay for the 24 hours. Look at the benefit to the company. Company doesn't need any kind of database engineer now because all the tasks are taken care by RDS. RDS is like server running with Postgres with data in it. I don't need now multiple administrators. Maybe I need one administrator. Before it was maybe like a team of administrators were doing, but now I need only one person to handle the database operation. That's why people, you see, the skill sets are now becoming obsolete over a period of time when things are moving on cloud. This is one example for it. If you people have understood the importance of the database, can I expect a quick confirmation regarding the understanding of database as a service, DBaaS? And this data RDS is nothing but relational database. Relational databases are like your Oracle, your Postgres, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, MariaDB. So all these services are available. All these 6 databases are available under the RDS. So now my web servers will start writing data into the database. Now I have catered the necessity of database where instead of having my own server, sure, I'll explain it once again. So instead of having my own server, like what I have to do if I have to install database, first thing I have to start a server, install a database in it, make it run, and then have to do it. That is like I have to manage it. But in this case, when you go to RDS and say, RDS, I need this, RDS will ask me, what is the configuration you need? I'm looking for Postgres. What is the kind of storage you need? 100 gigabytes of storage. What is the kind of, with basic simple with these two insights, I can have my database ready in a matter of minutes. So the point I want to bring is the time that you use for database running as a separate instance is now taken by a service, right? Database as a service. That is why we call it as DBaaS. If you people have understood the importance and the placement of database, can I expect another quick confirmation from all of you? Right. Are the database dynamic depending on the usage? Very much yes. Very good point. Let's say I started my database, I'm continuously using. I found the storage is not sufficient. So RDS is capable of allocating the storage for you. You don't need to worry about it. It will take care. I forgot to take a backup. Automated backups, system and the automated backups can take the backup for you. There's a kind of failure that is happening. RDS is sufficient enough to handle your failure. So these factors makes database very, very unique. RDS is very unique. And you see a lot of companies started to show interest in using RDS. Clear to all of you people? Right. Regarding the jobs, I'll explain you. The point is, when there was a separate team who was doing network, there was team who was doing databases, there was team who was doing maintenance, administration. Now, it is the single point of contact. It is now you the single point of contact who should be able to understand how databases work over cloud, and then you should be able to use in your projects. Tomorrow client says, we are using RDS service in our project. Boom, job is done. If you don't know what is RDS, a big question to this, then how is that you're going to handle cloud operation? Let's say you are very good and handling operations regards to project application deployment. You are a developer by chance. You are a Java developer, or you have been developing applications, writing the source code. Client tomorrow says that we have a plan that we are migrating on cloud. So at that time, you will come across scenarios like EC2 instances. You will come across load balancers. You will come across, databases. So at that point of time, when you don't know all these services, it's a big question mark for the client that what kind of skill set you have when we are moving on cloud. Only two ways: either you have to be part of the system by learning, or they'll keep you away from the system. So the point is, tomorrow, if companies migrate to cloud, what kind of expertise you have so that you can better understand the services. And look at the services of AWS. They have about 1,000 services and plus minus, because they keep on adding services on a day. They keep on removing the services on a day. Nobody has a control on it because they continuously release new services wherever it is required, and they'll remove it. So it is very hard for you to keep that right. So coming back to the explanation of load balancer, assume that I have two servers, server 1 in zone 1 and server 1 in zone 2. Now, the servers which are in zone 1 and zone 2 have to receive the traffic. Let's say there is kind of application running there. Let's say the Spotify app is running here on A server and there is a B server. Now, will you be available when someone is asking to play a genre song which is of 2020 album, a particular playlist from a particular playlist? Would you be available there manually to serve his request? A user out of million users, million requests are happening on a day-to-day basis. Would you be there to serve that request? Physically, no, you can't do that. So we should have a system that knows how to serve a request. Load balancer can serve that request. Million requests, million distribution across the instance. And also it's a kind of masking, right? It is kind of a masking, right? It is not exposing directly your servers to the outside world. It's kind of a mask. Any request have to get routed to your load balancer. Can I expect a quick confirmation, people, all of you there? Right. Now, in rest of other scenarios, you'll come across a lot of things like you need to monitor something. So we have a service in AWS Cloud, CloudWatch monitoring. So companies, if you're using AWS, they prefer to use CloudWatch. So CloudWatch speaks about what is the utilization of CPU, what is the networking, what is the network out, a lot of parameters we can read, because administrators have to do an analysis on logs, monitoring, maintenance. So monitoring is required. In order to do releases, we need a deployment server. Very simple way to make it happening is Jenkins. Jenkins is our deployment server, which will do a deployments into the system. So we have requirement to make things done. So because client needs continuous integration. So he needs every time when a developer is coming with new code, he wants to release it, we should take assistance of a deployment server. Okay, now moving on to the alerting part. Now there are some kind of failures happening, regular failures are happening, but you're not able to understand what are the failures. You want your system or your entire organization, your entire administrator should get alarms that if there is a kind of failure that is happening, my team should get a notification. So for that, I've taken the assistance of alarms. So let's say there are 3 servers, and out of which I should always have 1 server running always. But I found out that because of some reasons over a period of time, servers are not responding. So I want an alarm to trigger when the health of the instance is not good for a period of time. An alarm should happen. Or if an instance gets terminated without much notice, now running instances are 3. At any given point of time, my running instances count should be equal to 3. But I found the running instances now, because of one instance getting failed, equal to 2. So what should I have? I should get an alarm saying that out of 3 instances, 1 instance got failed. So there's an alarm in the form of a notification. That's what we call it as SNS, simple notification service. So we can alert via a notification. The notification can be in the form of a message, or it can be in the form of email to entire team saying that why people that the notification is all about the failure of an instance. Let's go ahead and check why is this happening. Now, moving away from the monitoring part, alerting part, we need to store our files. So I need now file storage. For example, I have to store the images of the albums, images of the uh, uh, I need some images to be stored across my application. So I prefer to use S3 for that, or file storage. S3 is a very, very crucial part of the system because it does store your entire objects. So what we are currently doing here using S3, all the object-based storages are stored across this S3. So we have different tiers in S3. We will be using different tiers in the storage. So S3 is one of the first services among AWS services. S3 was one of the first services across the S3 AWS has offered. I hope you people use Dropbox. Dropbox was the company that was completely built on AWS S3. The point I want to bring is that there is a popular acronym people say S3 is internet storage. Like most of the products you see are hosted in AWS S3. The best example is your Dropbox. So Dropbox is completely built on the idea as S3 as their infrastructure. So if you put a file, it's actually hosted in AWS S3. In Dropbox, if you put a file, it is actually getting hosted. The backend infrastructure is AWS S3. So people, if you guys are clear with the different components, different services, the placement of services, and the importance of services, why we need with regards to one another, can I expect a quick round of confirmation from all of you there? Still, I could see only few people responding. That means for the rest of other people, was it not interesting? Was it not clear? You feel this one is boring enough to achieve? No worries, people. I would like you to understand things that there were times that administration was part of one, development was part of another team, deployment was part of another team, infrastructure was part of another team. There were teams doing compartmentalized jobs. Like for this compartment, they do only this job. For other compartment, do this. Now, in this current generation, cloud, people are expected to have knowledge in every possible way. That is, you should have a knowledge about infrastructure because your infrastructure is given as a service. So the developer should know what is infrastructure as a service. An architect should know how to build this service. An administrator is available. He should know, maintain it and monitor it. If you are using an application on cloud, then you should know where is the database, where is the storage, where is the server. So it is now one person with multiple skill set, not in the previous generation, like for one skill set, multiple people were assigned. No more that scenario. People are now focusing, companies are focusing on very simple idea that if you are from the cloud scenarios, you should have a thorough knowledge of infrastructure. You should know how to use AWS services and also how to build applications on top of it. Most of us, most of us come from the application background. What do you mean by application? Maybe database, maybe
Sir, sorry to sir. Hello. Hello.
yeah, please.
Yeah, sir. Actually, we are not in the application background. Basically, we are from commerce background. So we are just taking interest in AWS. So after you explaining this sort of steps might be the next level of AWS. So once we go to the proper application, it might be easy for us to understand or might be a complex for us.
Okay. Can I park your question for some time and I can come back, please?
Yeah, please. Sure.
Right. So the point I was highlighting was this is most of us coming from the background are primarily into application, like might be coming from database, might be coming from network, might be coming from infrastructure, might be coming from deployment, development, Java. So that was that was part of last generation. Now companies are when companies move on cloud, they don't want one separate database guy. They don't want one separate network guy. They don't want one separate team to do all that stuff. Because by this time, I hope you people have already learned that database, most of the activities database is taken care by AWS. So why do we need network is already taken care by VPC? So why do we need separate team? When servers are already running, why do we need? So it's only that for a project requirement, they will take your experience. After that, if everything is running, they'll trim down the team. I'll tell you my experience, people. When we start, normally we will be around about for kind of projects that I work, we will be around 10 people for the project. One set of one side we'll have database guys, one set we have DevOps engineer, one set we have deployment engineers, one set we have 3 Java developers, one test engineer, infrastructure, then one network guy. So on average, 10 people will be there for a project. By the time the project gets delivered in the next 6 months, we will be hardly about 3 people in the system. One Java developer, one DevOps engineer, and mostly, if the chance is required, one DB guy, and that too offshore. Now, companies are able to save a lot of money, both from the cloud and also from the manpower. Do people agree with me? Can I expect a quick confirmation from all of you there? The importance of skill set and the importance of maintenance and the advantages as well as the disadvantages of cloud and the experience that can help you. Okay, so what I'll do is, people, I'll oversimplify this one. This oversimplified model can give you a clear view of how this entire system is working. So AWS Cloud, VPC. So someone was asking about the boundary. So this is how you will set your boundaries, and this is how you will break down your subnets. So I will break down my subnets into 4 small subnets spread across 2 zones, and admin should be able to access the resources via the load balancer to reach to my subnets. Sorry, this is the end user, and administrators will manage it. So for making more and more better choices, for more and more security purpose, we will use a lot more other services like NAT, Bastion. 2 more points I would like to discuss, and I'll close this. So the idea of Bastion server I couldn't discuss. So Bastion server is like, instead of giving you a direct access to public private subnets, we use a kind of gateway. That means you will start at admin. As an admin, you will end up at a Bastion. It will check whether Rachala is the employee of this organization. Is he the right person? If he is, he'll allow them access. We should have some kind of security to allow the direct access. That's why we use Bastion. NAT servers are built for the purpose. The purpose of the NAT server is they receive the traffic from the outside. Let's say this is the internet traffic. They will receive the traffic from internet and forward the traffic to your private subnets. See, for NAT, direct internet. Private, It is dependent on NAT servers. Can I expect a quick confirmation, people? I hope you guys have understood the importance of NAT and the Bastion. When you don't have Bastion, that's not the right way. Companies don't allow you everything directly. They will need some kind of scrutiny, right? I have to check whether this admin is part of my company. If he is, he should be given access. Otherwise, deny him the access. So instead of giving direct exposure, I cannot give database username and password to my employee like that. He has to get verified. So for that, Bastion is required. Call it as gem server, Bastion server, VPN instance. Next, NAT instances. NAT instances are those instances that are built for a purpose that they receive traffic from internet and forward the traffic to the private subnet. Very simple example is, let's say I have to download some package for my database. On Oracle package, I have to download, or a patch that I have to download. If I go ahead and connect to the internet, there is no gateway for me. So what I do, I put a NAT server and tell NAT server, please help this database so that you will receive traffic and forward the traffic. NAT can do that part. I'll show you inside the console. So with this basics, guys, we will get started with the setup of implementation of every other service. We will start analyzing it. For that, I would need all of you to get your account created on AWS. How to go ahead and create an AWS account? Very, very simple. AWS management console. Just go ahead and type in AWS management console. You'll get this console. So this is how you will get started with the creation of an account. Do you people have an account already with AWS? If you have, please, if no, do let me. Okay, for those people who have already, thumbs up. For those people who don't, it's a registration that you have to do. Very, very simple. Pick up an email which I feel that you should be actively using it. Strong password and name, whatever the name that you want to give for yourself, and continue. Right after this, there will be 2 to 3 pages that you will come across. Very, very simple. First page will ask your personal details. There will be a choice that will ask you to pick personal and professional. You have to pick either personal or a professional one. So I prefer to use it as personal because you're just using, and don't use your company names. People don't use your email IDs for the company. Some people register their name at Microsoft.com, AmazonSolutions.com. So don't use those. Use your Gmail account preferably because you are using for your personal usage. Right. Once your details are entered, you will come at and end up a page where you have to give your financial information. Boom, your financial information. So it is, you should have a credit or a debit card now. I hope you guys have that convenience. There are some students, they're college graduates, so they normally don't have credit cards. They do have debit cards, so you guys can use a credit or a debit card. So with the best of information, it will deduct you 2 rupees from your account the first time when you register it, okay, from a credit or a debit card, just to make sure the working of your card, whether your card is working or whether your card is not working. It will verify that. So once your 2 rupees gets deducted, it will confirm you the next 2 to 3 working days. Next 2 to 3 working days, you'll get back your money. You'll get back your credits. Don't worry about your money, about that INR deduction. Once after your financial information is thoroughly checked, you'll get another page which speaks about support plan. Give me a moment, I'll explain you what is this AWS support plan. Don't use any other plan except the free plan. So you may come across this page that would ask you to select. Make sure this will be the page. Once it pops up page, it will asking you, do you want to pick up a basic plan, developer plan, business plan, pick up free. Don't go for any other plan. If you want to pick, then you have to pay in advance $29 a month to AWS. Then you will get services of a developer plan. If you want to pay $100 a month, you get services from AWS. Don't do that. Free is enough. So what is this plan is like, you're taking a support, like if the services are not working, you're not able to, do kind of, for any kind of support, you need it. So the support is like 24/7. It is available. At any given point of time, you have a service that you need to get fixed. You can reach to AWS support. Under the basic plan, your turnaround time is 24 hours and more. They won't respond. They might respond in 24 hours. They might not respond even after 24 hours because you're under free tier. That's our essential. Least preference is given to us. Free tier. If you want to get higher precedence, pay them money. So in the next 1 hour, they'll respond to you. Then how much of dollars they're expecting? $100 a month. So don't go into it. You don't need any kind of support at this moment. Free should be sufficient for you to get started. Once it is done, you will get an email from AWS asking you to go ahead and confirm the registration. Once your registration is done, that's how you will get started with your AWS account. Now, regarding billing, regarding the bills, how you will get charged, what is all that stuff, I'll park it for tomorrow. In tomorrow's session, I'll give you a little more insight live into the account, where you will understand much more in terms of the billing, what is billing, how billing will happen, how your account will get billed, what are the credits that you have. I'll explain you in tomorrow's session in a little more detailed way. But what I need is, you need to have your account created. For those people who have already have it, that's good. If you don't have it, get your account created. So will you be able to get your account created latest by tomorrow, people? Hello? Yeah, fine, that's good. So get your account, and regarding the billing part, I'm going to explain you how the bill is going to happen, how you will get billed for it, everything in little more detail in tomorrow's session. So that's all, guys, for today from my side. I hope this session was informative to understand the agenda for our next coming days, what we're going to be doing, right? So admin, that's all from my side, and thanks for the recording that you have done. Thank you.